The stars had always been cold and distant, but in the year 2347, they became something else entirely. They became witnesses to an act of cruelty that would change the galaxy forever. Park Tae-ho stood in the observation deck of the Galactic Council Station, watching ships from 100 different species drift past the massive windows. He was a man of 53 years, with gray hair at his temples and calm eyes that had seen much in his lifetime. As humanity's ambassador to the Galactic Council, he had spent the last decade building relationships, negotiating trade deals, and proving that Earth deserved its place among the stars. It had not been easy. Humanity had only discovered faster than light travel 80 years ago. In galactic terms, they were infants. Most species looked at humans the way adults look at children playing with dangerous toys. Some were kind, some were curious, and some, like the Velen Empire, were neither. The Velen had ruled over 200 star systems for nearly 10,000 years. Their emperor, a being called Rovan, sat upon a throne that had been carved from the core of a dying star. He commanded fleets that numbered in the thousands and armies that had crushed rebellions across half the galaxy. To him, humanity was nothing more than an annoyance, a small species that had grown too confident, too quickly. Park Tae-ho knew the Velen did not like humans. He had felt their cold stares in council meetings. He had heard their dismissive comments when they thought he was not listening, but he had never imagined they would do what they did next. The message came on a quiet morning. Park Tae-ho was reviewing trade documents when his assistant, a young woman named Choi Yuna, entered his office. Her face was pale, and her hands were shaking. She did not speak at first. She simply placed a data tablet on his desk and stepped back. He picked it up and looked at the screen. For a long moment, he did not understand what he was seeing. The images showed cities on fire, ships burning in orbit, bodies floating in the darkness of space, and then the words at the bottom of the screen made everything clear. Velen Imperial Fleet has attacked Earth. Casualties estimated at 2.3 million. Park Tae-ho did not move. He did not speak. He simply stared at the screen while the world collapsed around him. The attack had been swift and brutal. Admiral Keth, one of the Velen Empire's most decorated commanders, had led a fleet of 50 warships into Earth's solar system. They had destroyed the orbital defense stations first, then turned their weapons on the planet below. Seoul, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, 3 cities, reduced to ash and rubble in less than an hour. The Velen had not bothered to declare war. They had not issued any demands. They had simply attacked, killed millions, and then retreated back to their own space. The message was clear. Know your place. In the halls of the Galactic Council, the news spread quickly. Diplomats from dozens of species whispered among themselves, watching the human ambassador with a mixture of pity and curiosity. They expected him to break down. They expected him to weep or rage or beg for help. But Park Tae-ho did none of these things. He walked through the corridors with the same calm expression he always wore. He attended the afternoon session as scheduled. He listened to debates about trade routes and mining rights as if nothing had happened. Only those who looked closely could see the truth. His hands, hidden beneath the table, were trembling. Councillor Maris, a diplomat from a neutral species called the Orvani, approached him after the session ended. The Orvani were known for their wisdom and their ability to read other beings. Maris looked at Park Tae-ho with 6 eyes that gleamed like polished stones. I am sorry for what has happened to your people, Maris said quietly. The Council will surely condemn this attack. We can file a formal complaint and request sanctions against the Velen Empire. Park Tae-ho looked at the alien for a long moment. Then he smiled, a small, tired smile that did not reach his eyes. Thank you, Counselor, he said. But a formal complaint will not be necessary. Maris tilted their head in confusion. Then what will you do? Surely you cannot let this stand without response. No, Park Tae-ho agreed. We cannot. He turned and walked away, leaving Maris standing alone in the empty hall. That night, Park Tae-ho sent a single message to Earth. It contained only 3 words: begin the awakening. Far away, in the cold darkness beyond the outer planets of the solar system, something stirred. Hidden asteroid bases that had been dormant for decades received the signal and came alive. Shipyards buried deep within hollow moons began to hum with power, and in secret military installations across 5 continents, men and women opened, sealed vaults that had not been touched since the Silent Century, the 100 years after first contact when humanity had pretended to disarm, while secretly preparing for the day when the galaxy would show its true face. Admiral Yoon Ji-ho received the message in his quarters on Luna Base. He was a quiet man of 60 years, with a face like weathered stone and eyes that had seen too many battles. He had spent his entire career preparing for a moment he had hoped would never come. Now it had come. He stood before a holographic display that showed the true strength of the United Earth Navy, not the small patrol fleet that the galaxy knew about, but the real fleet. 1,200 warships, each one built in secret, each one armed with weapons that the Galactic Council had never seen. They had been hiding in the shadows for 80 years. Waiting, Secretary of Defense Kim Nari appeared on the screen beside him. She was a woman of sharp intelligence and fierce determination, and her voice was steady despite the grief in her eyes. "The President has authorized full mobilization," she said. "Admiral, you have command." Yoon Ji-ho nodded slowly. He looked at the display one more time, at the thousands of lights representing ships and soldiers and weapons. Then he spoke the words that would change everything. "Send word to Ambassador Park. Tell him to request an audience with Emperor Rovan. In person." Kim Nari raised an eyebrow. "An audience? After what they did?" "Yes," Yoon Ji-ho said. "We are going to give them one chance to surrender. It is more than they gave us." He turned off the display and walked to the window. Outside, the stars glittered like diamonds scattered across black velvet. Somewhere out there, the Velan Empire was celebrating their easy victory over the primitive humans. They had no idea what was coming. "They thought we were farmers," Yoon Ji-ho whispered to himself. "They forgot that farmers know how to hunt wolves." The awakening had begun. 3 weeks passed after the attack on Earth, and the galaxy grew worried. It was not the kind of worry that comes from watching a wounded animal die. It was a different kind. The kind that comes from watching a wounded animal go silent. When prey stops screaming, predators know that something has changed, something dangerous. Earth had gone dark. Every communication channel was closed. Every trade route was abandoned. Every diplomatic connection was severed, without warning or explanation. Ships that tried to approach the solar system were turned away by automated defense platforms that responded to all hails with the same message: "Earth is currently unavailable for diplomatic correspondence. Please try again later." No one had ever seen anything like it. Counselor Meras of the Orvani spent long hours trying to understand what the humans were doing. In their experience, attacked species did one of two things. They either surrendered and begged for mercy, or they launched an immediate counterattack fueled by anger and desperation. Both responses were predictable. Both responses could be managed. But this silence was neither. "They are planning something," Meras said during a private meeting with other neutral counselors. "The humans are not acting like victims. They are acting like hunters, setting a trap." The others dismissed this idea. Humanity was too young, too weak, too primitive to pose any real threat to the mighty Velan Empire. The attack had probably broken them. They were likely hiding in shame, hoping the galaxy would forget about them. But Meras was not so sure. Far from the Galactic Council, far from watching eyes, Earth was transforming. Secretary of Defense Kim Nari had not slept more than 3 hours a night since the attack. She stood in the command center buried deep beneath the mountains of what had once been called Korea, watching screens filled with data and reports. Around her, hundreds of officers worked in focused silence. There was no panic. There was no chaos. There was only cold, determined efficiency. "Status report," she said. A young officer named Bae Junho stepped forward with a tablet. He was tired like everyone else, but his voice was steady. "Shipyards at Europa, Titan, and the asteroid belt are operating at full capacity. We've activated 847 vessels so far, with another 300 coming online within the week. All stealth systems are confirmed operational." Kim Nari nodded. "What about the supply lines?" "Hidden depots across 14 star systems have been accessed. Fuel, ammunition, medical supplies, everything is being moved into position. The Velan have no idea we're there." "Good." "And the infiltration teams?" Junho hesitated for just a moment. "Captain Lee Hana reports that her people are in place. They've mapped the entire VLAN defense network. When the time comes, they can disable the homeworld shields in under 6 minutes. Kim Nari allowed herself a small smile. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been preparing for disaster their entire life, and was finally seeing that preparation pay off. The truth was that humanity had never trusted the galaxy. How could they? They had emerged from Earth as the sole survivors of countless wars among themselves. They had learned, through blood and fire, that peace was only possible when backed by strength. So when they joined the Galactic Council and were told to disarm, they had nodded politely and done exactly the opposite. The Silent Century was what historians called the 100 years after first contact. During that time, humanity had built 2 navies. The first was small and visible patrol ships, cargo vessels, and light defensive craft that satisfied the Council's requirements. The second was hidden, a vast military machine concealed in the darkest corners of the solar system and beyond. Now that hidden machine was waking up. Admiral Yoon Ji-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the carrier named Eternal Dawn. It was not the largest ship in the fleet, but it was the most advanced. From here, he could coordinate the movements of over 1,000 vessels scattered across dozens of star systems. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we've received word from Ambassador Park. The Emperor has agreed to the audience. 3 days from now, on the Velen homeworld." Yoon Ji-ho turned to face the officer. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes that made everyone on the bridge stand a little straighter. 3 days, he repeated. That is more than enough time. He walked to the main display and began giving orders. Ships that had been drifting in silent darkness began to move. They traveled through routes that were not on any galactic map, using technology that the Velen believed humans did not possess. By the time the Emperor sat down with Ambassador Park, the human fleet would be in position surrounding the VLAN Empire, like wolves circling a wounded deer. On a small stealth ship hidden in the shadow of a Velen border moon, Captain Lee Hana reviewed her mission one final time. She was a woman of 35, with short black hair and eyes that missed nothing. Her crew of 12 had been living in silence for 2 weeks, avoiding detection while they mapped enemy defenses. "Captain," her second-in-command whispered, "are we really going to do this? Attack the Velen homeworld?" Lee Hana looked at him. She thought about her sister, who had lived in Seoul. She thought about the messages she would never receive again, the voice she would never hear. Then she pushed those thoughts away and focused on the mission. "We're not going to attack," she said quietly. "We're going to send a message. The Velen think they can kill our people and face no consequences. They think we're weak because we don't start wars." She turned back to her screens, where the Velen defense grid glowed like a spider web made of light. They're about to learn the difference between not starting wars and not finishing them. Back on the Galactic Council station, Counselor Maris finally received a response to their repeated attempts to contact Earth. It was a recorded message from Ambassador Park Tae-ho. The human looked tired but composed, his voice calm and measured. "Counselor Maris, thank you for your concern. I want to assure you that humanity has not given up. We have not surrendered. We are simply preparing. The message paused, and for a moment, Maris saw something flash across the ambassador's face. It might have been grief, it might have been anger, or it might have been something else entirely, something that made the ancient Orvani feel a chill they had not felt in centuries. "In 3 days, Park Tae-ho continued, I will meet with Emperor Rovan. I will give him a chance to make things right. I hope, for everyone's sake, that he takes it." The message ended. Maris sat alone in the darkness of their quarters, thinking about what they had just seen. They had lived for over 400 years. They had watched empires rise and fall. They had seen species that seemed invincible crumble to dust. And now, for the first time, they wondered if they were about to see it happen again. The silence from Earth was not the silence of defeat. It was the silence before the storm. The throne room of the Velen Empire was designed to make visitors feel small. It stretched for nearly half a kilometer, with ceilings so high that clouds sometimes formed beneath them. Pillars of black stone rose like ancient trees, carved with the names of conquered worlds and defeated enemies. At the far end, raised on a platform of glowing crystal, sat the throne itself, a massive chair forged from the collapsed core of a star, radiating a faint heat that reminded everyone who entered that they stood in the presence of absolute power. Emperor Rovan waited on that throne, surrounded by hundreds of his nobles, generals, and advisors. He was tall even by Valen standards, with pale blue skin and eyes that burned like cold fire. He had ruled for 300 years, and in all that time, no one had ever defied him and lived. Today would be no different. Or so he believed. The great doors at the entrance opened, and Ambassador Park Tae-ho began his long walk across the throne room floor. He was alone. He carried no weapons, no guards, no entourage of advisors. He wore simple black robes that looked almost poor compared to the gleaming armor and jeweled clothing of the Velen around him. Camera drones floated overhead, broadcasting the scene to every corner of the galaxy. Emperor Rovan had made sure of that. He wanted everyone to witness the humiliation of humanity. Park Tae-ho walked slowly, his footsteps echoing in the vast silence. Hundreds of alien eyes watched him with contempt, amusement, or simple curiosity. To them, he was a dead man walking, a representative of a broken species come to beg for mercy. But if Park Tae-ho felt any fear, he did not show it. He reached the base of the throne platform and stopped. Protocol demanded that visitors kneel before the emperor. Park Tae-ho did not kneel. He simply stood, looking up at the ruler of 200 worlds with calm, steady eyes. A ripple of whispers passed through the crowd. This was unexpected. This was insulting. Several guards moved forward, hands on their weapons, but Emperor Rovan raised a hand to stop them. He was amused. Let the human have his moment of foolish pride. It would make his surrender all the sweeter. Ambassador Park Tae-ho of Earth, the Emperor said, his voice filling the enormous room. You have requested this audience. I have graciously granted it, despite the many offenses your species has committed against our empire. Park Tae-ho said nothing. I assume, Rovan continued, that you have come to apologize for your people's arrogance, to beg forgiveness for the insults you have shown to our great civilization, and to accept whatever terms of surrender we choose to impose. Still, Park Tae-ho remained silent. Emperor Rovan leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Well? Speak, human. Have you come to apologize or not? Park Tae-ho took a slow breath. When he spoke, his voice was not loud, but somehow it carried to every corner of the throne room. Every camera drone captured every word. No, he said. I have not come to apologize. The silence that followed was complete. No one moved. No one breathed. Even Emperor Rovan seemed frozen, unable to process what he had just heard. Then why? The Emperor finally said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Are you here? Park Tae-ho lifted his head slightly. His eyes met the Emperor's without flinching. I am here to inform you, he said, that you attacked our homeland. You killed our children. You burned our cities. 2,300,000 human beings died because of your orders. Mothers, fathers, children who had done nothing wrong. They are gone now. They will never come back. His voice remained calm, but there was something beneath it, a weight that pressed down on everyone who heard it. I am also here to inform you that in human history, we have a saying. Those who bring war to our home will find war brought to theirs. Emperor Rovan laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound that echoed off the stone walls. The nobles around him joined in, filling the throne room with mocking laughter. War? Rovan said. You threaten me with war? Your species has existed for barely a moment. Your fleet is nothing but patrol boats and cargo ships. You have no armies, no weapons, no power. What could you possibly do to harm the Velan Empire? Park Tae-ho waited for the laughter to fade. Then he spoke again. I am here to give you one chance. Surrender now. Turn yourself over to the Galactic Council for trial. Pay reparations to the families of the dead. Disarm your military. And accept supervision. The laughter stopped. Now there was only stunned disbelief. If you do these things, Park Tae-ho continued, no more blood will be shed. Your people will be spared. Your worlds will remain intact. Emperor Rovan rose from his throne, his face twisted with rage. How dare you? How dare you stand in my throne room and make demands of me? I should have you executed where you stand. You could try, Park Tae-ho said quietly, but it would not change what is coming. For a long moment, the two of them stared at each other. The ancient emperor, with all his power and pride, and the human ambassador who had nothing but words and unwavering determination. Then Emperor Rovan sat back down, composing himself. He would not give this human the satisfaction of seeing his anger. He smiled, a thin and terrible smile. I reject your offer, he said. And when you return to your burned and broken world, you will tell your people that the Velan Empire does not negotiate with insects. We crush them. Park Tae-ho nodded slowly, as if he had expected this answer. Perhaps he had. Very well, he said. I will not waste any more of your time, Emperor. But I ask you to remember this moment. Remember that you were given a choice. Remember that you chose pride over peace. He turned and began walking back toward the great doors. The crowd parted before him, still too shocked to react. The camera drones followed, capturing every step. Just before he reached the doors, Park Tae-ho stopped. He turned his head slightly, speaking over his shoulder. One more thing, Emperor. You called us insects. You said we were nothing. But in all your 300 years of rule, you never learned something that every human child knows. And what is that? Rovan demanded. Park Tae-ho looked back at him one final time. And for the first time, the Emperor saw something in those human eyes that made him uneasy. It was not fear. It was not desperation. It was certainty. Never disturb a nest, Park Tae-ho said, unless you are prepared to face the swarm. Then he walked through the doors and was gone. High Priest Solom, the Emperor's oldest advisor, stood in the shadows beside the throne. He had lived even longer than Rovan, and he had seen things that would drive lesser beings mad. He had felt the rise and fall of empires in his bones, and now, watching the doors close behind the human ambassador, he felt something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. My Emperor, he said quietly. Perhaps we should increase our defensive preparations. Just in case, Rovan waved his hand dismissively. The human was bluffing. They have nothing. They are nothing. In a month, they will come crawling back, begging for mercy. Solom nodded. But he did not believe it. He had watched the human carefully throughout the entire confrontation. Park Tae-ho had not been nervous. He had not been desperate. He had spoken like a man who already knew how this story would end. And that, more than anything else, terrified the High Priest. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, Admiral Yoon Ji-ho received a single transmission from Ambassador Park. They refused, the message said. May history forgive us for what comes next. Yoon Ji-ho closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them and began giving orders. The trap was set. Now it was time to close it. The first sign of the storm came at midnight on Valen Prime. Admiral Keth was sleeping in his quarters when the alarms began to scream. He jumped from his bed and ran to the command center, still pulling on his uniform. Officers rushed past him in controlled panic, their faces pale with confusion and fear. Report, he shouted as he reached the main display. A young officer turned to him, her voice shaking. Sir, we've lost contact with the border stations. All of them. 17 systems went dark in the last hour. Keth felt ice form in his stomach. All of them? That's impossible. Show me. The display flickered to life, showing a map of Velen space. Red dots marked systems that were no longer responding. They formed a ring around the Empire, a noose that was slowly tightening. There must be some mistake, Keth said. Our border defenses are the strongest in the galaxy. No one could. Admiral. Another officer interrupted. We're receiving reports from the 7th Fleet. They're under attack. By whom? The officer's face went white. Humans, sir. Hundreds of human warships. They came out of nowhere. For one terrible moment, Admiral Keth remembered the attack on Earth. He remembered how easy it had been, how the humans had offered no resistance, how they had died by the millions without firing a single shot in return. He had laughed about it afterward. He had called them weak. He had called them cowards. He was not laughing now. Across the galaxy, the United Earth Navy emerged from the shadows like ghosts becoming solid, ships that had been hiding in asteroid fields, gas giant atmospheres, and the dark spaces between stars suddenly appeared on Valen sensors. They moved with perfect coordination, striking targets that seemed random at first but quickly revealed a terrible pattern. Communication relays were destroyed first, then supply depots, then refueling stations. Within 6 hours, the Velan Empire was blind, deaf, and starving. Admiral Yoon Jiho watched the reports come in from the bridge of the Eternal Dawn. His face showed no satisfaction, no joy. This was not a moment to celebrate. This was simply a job that needed to be done. "Status of enemy fleet movements?" he asked. "Scattered, sir," his tactical officer replied. Without communications, their admirals are making independent decisions. Some are rushing to defend the homeworld. Others are trying to protect their own territories. They're not coordinating. Good. Begin Phase 2. Phase 2 was the part that would make military historians write books for centuries. Instead of pressing their advantage against the confused Valen forces, the human fleet split into dozens of smaller groups. Each group targeted specific military installations while carefully avoiding civilian areas. Yoon Jiho had been very clear about this from the beginning. They were not monsters. They were not here to slaughter innocents like the Valen had slaughtered Earth's children. They were here to destroy an empire's ability to wage war, not to commit genocide. "Broadcast on all frequencies," he ordered. "Repeat the message, every hour." The message went out across Velan space, heard by soldiers and civilians alike. "This is Admiral Yoon Jiho of the United Earth Navy. We are not your enemies. Your leaders attacked our home without warning or reason. They killed millions of innocent people. We have come to ensure they can never do so again. Civilians will not be harmed. Military targets will be destroyed. Do not resist, and you will survive. This is not conquest. This is consequence." The message spread through the Velen Empire like fire. Many soldiers, seeing the unstoppable human advance and hearing these words, chose to surrender rather than die for an emperor who had brought this disaster upon them. But the most important mission was still ahead. Captain Lee Hana and her crew had been waiting for this moment. Her stealth ship, the Silent Fury, hung in the darkness above the Velan homeworld, invisible to every sensor the Empire possessed. For weeks, she had studied the planetary defense grid, the network of weapons platforms and shield generators that protected Velan Prime from attack. "Captain," her pilot whispered, "we're receiving the signal. It's time." Lee Hana nodded. She thought about her sister one more time. She thought about the life that had been stolen, the future that would never happen. Then she pushed those thoughts away. "Begin the operation," she said. What followed was a masterpiece of precision warfare. The Silent Fury released a swarm of tiny drones, each one carrying programs designed by Earth's greatest computer scientists. These drones infiltrated the defense grid through maintenance ports and backup systems, spreading like a virus through the network. In exactly 5 minutes and 43 seconds, the mighty shield that protected Velan Prime flickered and died. The weapons platforms that had guarded the planet for millennia went silent. The homeworld of the galaxy's most powerful empire was suddenly defenseless. Lee Hana opened a channel to Admiral Yoon Jiho. "Defense grid neutralized. 0 casualties." There was a brief pause. Then Yoon Jiho's voice came through. "Well done, Captain. Return to base. You've done enough." The human fleet arrived at Velan Prime 3 hours later. 1,000 warships filled the sky above the capital city, their weapons charged and ready. But they did not fire on the planet below. They simply waited. In his palace, Emperor Rovan watched the fleet through his window. His throne room was empty now. His nobles had fled. His generals were dead or captured. His empire, which had taken 10,000 years to build, had crumbled in less than 3 days. Admiral Keth was brought before him in chains. The architect of the Earth attack had been captured trying to escape on a private shuttle. He did not look like a proud warrior anymore. He looked like what he truly was, a broken man who had finally understood the cost of his cruelty. "How?" Rovan whispered. "How is this possible? They were insects. They were nothing." Keth had no answer. He knelt on the floor, staring at nothing, waiting for the end. High Priest Solem stepped forward. He was the only advisor who had not abandoned his emperor. "I tried to warn you," he said softly. When the human ambassador spoke, I could see it in his eyes. He was not afraid. He already knew he had won. But how? Rovan demanded. Where did they get such power? They hid it, Solom replied. For 80 years, they pretended to be weak while building strength in secret. They let us believe they were harmless. They let us believe we could strike them without consequence. He paused, looking out at the fleet that darkened the sky. We thought they were cowards because they did not start wars. We never considered that perhaps they simply chose not to. There is a difference between inability and choice, my emperor, and we learned that lesson too late. A message came through on the palace communication system. It was Admiral Yoon Jiho. Emperor Rovan, I am told you refused to surrender when given the chance. I am giving you that chance one final time. Come out peacefully. Face trial for your crimes, and this war ends today. With no more death. Rovan stood frozen, his pride battling with the reality before his eyes. If you refuse, Yoon Jiho continued, we will not destroy your world. We will not massacre your people. We are not like you. But you will be removed from power, by force if necessary, and your name will be remembered only as a warning to others. The Emperor looked at his empty throne room, at the chains on Admiral Keth, at the sky full of enemy ships. He looked at everything he had built and everything he had lost. And finally, after 300 years of absolute power, Emperor Rovan of the Vilan Empire made the only choice he had left. He surrendered. 1 month after the fall of the Vilan Empire, the Galactic Council gathered for the most important assembly in its history. The Great Hall was filled beyond capacity. Representatives from every known species crowded the seats, balconies, and corridors. Camera drones from 1,000 worlds broadcast the event to trillions of viewers. Everyone wanted to witness this moment. The moment when humanity would reveal what kind of species they truly were. Ambassador Park Tae-ho stood at the central podium, looking out at the sea of alien faces. He was the same man who had walked alone into Emperor Rovan's throne room. He wore the same simple black robes, but something had changed in the galaxy's eyes. Where they had once seen a representative of a primitive species, they now saw something else entirely. They saw the voice of a civilization that had destroyed the mightiest empire in the galaxy in 72 hours. Behind him, standing in formal military uniform, was Admiral Yoon Jiho. The Admiral's presence was not meant as a threat. It was simply a reminder. Words were easier to hear when backed by the strength to enforce them. Counselors, Park Tae-ho began, his voice clear and steady. I stand before you today as the representative of Earth and the United Human Colonies. 1 month ago, the Velan Empire attacked our homeworld without warning. They killed 2,300,000 of our people. They believed we were weak. They believed we would accept their cruelty, in silence. He paused, letting the words settle over the assembly. They were wrong. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Park Tae-ho waited for it to fade before continuing. Many of you are wondering what humanity will do now. You have seen our military power. You know that we could take the Velan worlds for ourselves. We could build an empire of our own, ruling through fear as others have done before us. The murmur grew louder. This was exactly what many species expected. It was what they would have done in humanity's place. But we will not do this, Park Tae-ho said firmly. Because that is not who we are. Silence fell again. This time deeper than before. Humanity does not seek conquest. We do not hunger for power over others. What we want is simple: the safety of our people, the freedom to grow and explore, and peace with those who offer peace to us. He gestured to a data screen behind him, which displayed maps of Velan territory. We are returning all occupied Velan worlds to self-governance. Their military has been disbanded, and weapons of mass destruction have been removed. But we have not taken their resources. We have not enslaved their people. We have not burned their cities as they burned ours. A species called the Thoran, known for their aggressive nature, rose to speak. Why? Their representative demanded. After what they did to you, why show mercy? By the laws of war, you have earned the right to take everything they have. Park Tae-ho looked at the Thoran with calm eyes. You are correct. By the laws of war, we could claim any prize we wanted. But humanity does not live by the laws of war. We live by a higher standard, one we have chosen for ourselves. He turned back to the full assembly. We show mercy because revenge is easy. Justice is hard. Revenge only creates more enemies, more hatred, more war. Justice creates the possibility of peace. Admiral Yoon Ji-ho stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was softer than anyone expected from a man who had commanded the destruction of an empire. We did not enjoy what we did, he said. Every VLAN soldier who died was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. We do not celebrate their deaths. We mourn them, just as we mourn our own. He looked directly at the Thoran representative. You ask why we show mercy. The answer is simple. Because we are strong enough to make that choice. It takes no strength to be cruel. Any coward can destroy, but it takes true power to defeat an enemy and then help them stand again. The assembly fell into thoughtful silence. This was not what they had expected. This was not how empires behaved. This was something new. Councillor Maris of the Orvani rose to speak. Their 6 eyes gleamed with something that might have been tears. Ambassador Park, they said. I remember our conversation after the attack on Earth. I offered condolences and suggested filing a formal complaint. You thanked me. But you had another plan. I remember, Park Teo said. At the time, I thought you were in shock. I thought the attack had broken your spirit. Maris paused. I was a fool. Your silence was not defeat. It was patience. Your calm was not weakness. It was control. They looked around at the assembled counselors. I have lived for 400 years. I have watched empires rise and fall. I have seen species that ruled through fear crumble to dust, and I have seen species that were dismissed as insignificant rise to greatness. They turned back to Park Tae-ho. Humanity has taught the galaxy a lesson today, not just about military power, but about character, about choosing mercy when vengeance would be easier, about building peace instead of extending war. Another counselor, from a species that had always supported the Villan, stood up with a question. What will happen to Emperor Rovan? He will stand trial. Park Tae-ho answered, not before a human court, but before this council. His crimes were against all civilized beings, not just humanity. Let all species judge him. Let justice be seen and shared. This answer surprised many. Most conquerors would have executed their defeated enemy or kept him as a trophy. Instead, the humans were offering to share the responsibility of judgment. And Admiral Keth, the counselor continued, the one who led the attack, he is also in custody. He will face the same trial. But we have not mistreated him. He has been given food, medical care, and legal representation. He will have the chance to speak in his own defense. Why? The counselor asked, genuinely confused. He killed millions of your people. Park Tae-ho's expression did not change, but those closest to him could see something shift in his eyes, a shadow of grief that never fully disappeared. Because justice is not about hatred, he said quietly. It is about truth. It is about ensuring that what happened to us never happens to anyone else. If we become monsters to defeat monsters, then we have lost the very thing we were fighting for. The assembly voted that day to accept humanity's proposal. Emperor Rovan would stand trial before the Galactic Council. The Villan worlds would be returned to self-governance under supervised demilitarization, and humanity would take its place not as a conqueror, but as a protector, a species that had proven it could destroy but chose instead to build. In the months that followed, the galaxy changed. Species that had once bullied their neighbors grew cautious. Knowing that humanity was watching, trade flourished as new partnerships formed. And slowly, something that had been rare in galactic history began to spread. Trust. Admiral Yoon Ji-ho returned to Luna Base, where he was greeted as a hero, but he did not feel like one. He felt tired. He felt old. He felt the weight of every life that had been lost, human and Velen alike. On the anniversary of the attack, he traveled to what had once been Seoul. A memorial now stood there, a simple wall of black stone inscribed with the names of the dead, millions of names, stretching into the distance. He walked along the wall, reading names at random. Kim Suman, age 7. Park Hanul, age 82. Choi Yerin, age 3 months, 3 months old. She had barely begun to live. Yoon Jiho stopped and placed his hand against the cold stone. For a long moment, he stood there in silence, letting the weight of grief wash over him. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Rest now, children of Earth. You are avenged. You are remembered. And because of you, the galaxy will never forget what happens when they threaten our home. A gentle wind blew across the memorial, carrying the scent of flowers that visitors had left at the base of the wall. Somewhere in the distance, children were laughing. A new generation growing up in a galaxy that was a little safer, a little more just, because of what had been sacrificed. Yoon Jiho looked up at the stars that were just beginning to appear in the evening sky. Out there, among those countless points of light, humanity was building a new future. Not through conquest, not through fear, but through the simple, powerful choice to be better than those who had wronged them. He took a deep breath and smiled, a small, sad smile that held both grief and hope. We made it. He whispered to the names on the wall. We made it through the darkness, and we're still here. Then he turned and walked away, leaving the memorial to its silent watch over the past while the future stretched out before him. Full of possibilities he had fought to protect, the galaxy would remember this moment for 10,000 years, and humanity would be ready for whatever came next.